So other than the technical difficulties, and that's why I would have much preferred to have presented to you in person, which is what I'd hoped by now, to come up there and visit friends and family around the area and present to you in person instead of video in Zoom. But be that as it may, I'm going to talk about a project that I've been involved in for 4 or 5 years now, collecting early Miocene land mammals from a locality in eastern North Carolina called the Belgrade Fossil Quarry. And have any of you, other than Victor, and I was wondering whether, I didn't see Dave Bohaska here, but other than Victor, have any of you ever collected from the Belgrade Quarry?
Yes.
Ralph has.
Ralph, what did you collect there?
A long time ago. That was back with Clayton Ray, and
Sure.
we were going to a fossil fairs down in North Carolina, and we went to Belgrade.
Yeah.
But anything we collected, I think we ended up giving either to the North Carolina Maritime Natural History Museum. I don't really recall.
Yeah. And Bruce, did you say you've collected there as well?
I live 20 miles from the quarry.
Okay.
I've been collecting there since 2011. Unfortunately, I'd say 99% of my collection is marine.
Yes.
I've never had the pleasure of finding any land mammals, but the quarry's been closed for about 1.5 years. Martin Marietta closed down all its Carolina quarries to collecting, but we're keeping our fingers crossed through the North Carolina Fossil Club.
Sure.
That it may reopen.
Sure.
Collecting.
This is
Yeah.
Paul. I collected there a few times. I actually, now thinking about it, did get a land mammal tooth there. There was a Marine who for years would help with a lot of education down there. Specifically at that quarry, they had set up picnic tables and groves. I want to say his name was Larry, but I can't swear to it. Tellenkamp? Richard Tellenkamp. And man, he just loved having people down in there. And it was the quarry back then was very supportive, even allowed them to set up like a small picnic area for people to come and visit. So it was a nice little place that, in those days of Lee Creek, you would swing over there or, go to Greensmill Run, and you could visit all these localities. It was nice.
Yeah, well, if you have any land mammals from there, and they're pre-Pleistocene. Now there is Pleistocene overburden with, you can get bison and equus and stuff like that. But if you get stuff that's older than that and it's land mammals, it's really interesting, and that ought to go to the Smithsonian ultimately. But anyway, so I want to talk to you about the land mammals, and it's more not just about the mammals themselves, but about the concept of citizen science and collectors, and how folks like you've just described can make really important discoveries. These land mammals are not a dime a dozen. These land mammals are 1 in 1,000. Okay, so it takes a lot of work to find these pre-Pleistocene land mammals from the Belgrade Quarry, and that's what I want to talk with you about today. Just a second here. Whoops. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about Belgrade, why it's important, its age and its importance, a little bit about citizen science and participation, amateurs participating with professionals, and the importance of that synergy, a little bit about what we found so far. And yeah, I do want to end with a discussion of the fossil project, which some of you know about. And of course, Victor was heavily involved when he was a student at UF and since that time. So familiar faces. I thought that Dave Bohaska would probably be here tonight. I wanted to just recognize that a lot of the fossils collected that are of importance, not just collected by him, but aggregated by other people showing him land mammals when he would be down there. He's been going now to Aurora for quite some time, I guess overlapping with Clayton or just after Clayton finished. And he's been a real important part of this endeavor. Of course, there's me with a little megalodon tooth there. This is actually a picture of me from Peru, not from Belgrade, with a megalodon tooth. And anyway, that's a whole nother story. And of course, there's Victor. And so these are familiar faces that you know, but someone you may not know who without him, this project would not have come to fruition. And this is Lee Cohn. Lee Cohn is a retired teacher, community college professor, equestrian extraordinaire. He lives in South Carolina, and he is truly an example of a fossil collector, a citizen paleontologist, I'd want to call him, who's made a difference. And I'll tell you why in just a second. So if you haven't already met Lee Cohn, he's somebody who I have immense regard for in terms of his love of paleontology and his love of having everyone work together for a common goal. Okay, so many of us have been to the Aurora Fossil Festival, and we all know that the raison d'etre for the Fossil Festival in the past were these fantastic phosphate mines from Lee Creek that many of you have collected on, and some of they're fantastically fossiliferous. The problem is they're closed to the public, and that has put a real kibosh on the production of fossils from this area. Are mostly historical now, but be that as it may, every year on Memorial Day weekend, the Aurora Fossil Museum, which is this little brick building down here, if you haven't been to Aurora, it's basically a small town with a couple of, there are no stoplights. So basically there's the museum, there's 2 streets downtown, and that's it. And one of the main areas, reason for Aurora still existing is the Fossil Museum. And in its heyday, of course, it was the place where a lot of the fossils came out from the mines and were collected, and then people were comparing them with the collections from the Fossil Museum. But now they have a festival, and they have a parade on Memorial Day weekend. On the Saturday, they crown a little Miss Fossil on the Friday night. And then they used to open up the community center for us to show fossil collections. And here is a member of one of the fossil clubs, maybe a member of the North Carolina Fossil Club, don't know. But anyway, here he is with all of his fossils. And this was a wonderful time for us to socialize and to understand what each other had. I typically would staff a table IDing fossils along with the Smithsonian. There's Fred Grady, who also for many, many years would go to the Aurora Fossil Festival. And of course, Dave Bohaska joined him, and we would hook up there. And I went there for about 6 or 7 years until 2019, of course, and then COVID hit, and I haven't gone since that time. So the reason for me to go to Belgrade was usually on the Friday before the Belgrade weekend, Memorial Day weekend, we would have, on the Friday before the Aurora Fossil Festival, which was always a Memorial Day weekend, the fossil club that Lee Cohn was president of would host a field trip to Belgrade. And I just think that Belgrade's a fabulous place to look for fossils, and I would make a point of getting there on Thursday night so that I could get up and go with that fossil club and collect the next day. Okay, so why Belgrade? Well, I guess I probably don't need to describe to most of you, but Belgrade is really important. It's well known to the paleontological community on the East Coast. It has fabulous invertebrate fossils, sharks, and some of the best fossils that are found from Belgrade are virtually unknown elsewhere, except perhaps in localities like the Calvert. Okay, it's very fossiliferous, and it's you go there, and Rob Birchfield, I think is his last name, is a middle school science teacher, I think, if I recall correctly. And after a couple of hours, he found some megalon teeth, and you can find hundreds of shark's teeth. I mean, Victor likes the shark's teeth from Belgrade, and I think they're interesting as well. But of course, I'm looking for those 1 in 1,000 fragments of land mammals that tell us something about the land mammal age and the kinds of animals that lived in what's now North Carolina about 20 million years ago. So thankfully, there's actually a really good stratigraphic report of this area by Ward, Lawrence, and Blackwelder, which really provides the stratigraphic basis for understanding the geology of the area, and it allows us to zero in on our fossil collecting. in this general area, a composite rock column or stratigraphic section of the tertiary, this is a figure taken out of that paper, goes from the Castle Hayne Formation, Middle Eocene, all the way up in the Pliocene to the Duplin Formation and this other formation of Pliocene. And then above that are some unstudied places. Can you see my cursor? You can, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so there you can get bison and equus and fragments of proboscidean teeth up in the Pleistocene, which is not at all surprising. But what I'm interested in is there is a locality in the lower Miocene called the Belgrade Formation, same name as the quarry. And based on the stratigraphic correlation, this is early Miocene, about 20 million years old. And I'm certain that the land mammals that have been collected from the Belgrade Formation, although they're not in proper stratigraphic context with one exception. Wait, let me turn on hold on. That's okay, you can see I had my video off. With one exception, I'll talk about in a second, most of the land mammals were scattered in spoils that are out of context. The stratigraphic context of this section indicates that the lower Miocene Belgrade Formation is a small unit. You can see here it's about, if that's feet, that's about 10 feet thick. And it's basically this area right in here. But when you work the spoils over here and over here, you don't know where those miners dump these, and you get what you find. There's shark's teeth and all different sorts of mollusks, etc. Okay, those are the common things. And then once in a while, somebody picks up a tooth of a land mammal, and that gets me really excited. But anyway, so this is the stratigraphy of the entire composite section in this general area. And the blue arrow indicates the outcrops in the Belgrade Quarry itself. All right, so why I'm interested is here. I went to the Smithsonian. Dave Bohaska, after I started going to Belgrade in about 2012, Dave said, hey, we have some land mammals up in the collection in the Smithsonian. Most of them have been donated, frankly. I've picked through and found a couple of things myself. He would say, but most of it's been donated. And when I went up there visiting family, and then I went into the Smithsonian, I got really excited because these land mammals are very rare, and they indicate they're similar to the kinds of land mammals that I've been working on in Panama at the same time about 10 years ago, and they're also similar to classic localities in Nebraska. And if you go to, this is the Maternus mural in the Smithsonian of what life was like in North America about 20 million years ago, based on the Agate Springs Fossil Beds National Monument. And the kinds of fossils that are found in Belgrade are a dead ringer for what you find in agate, and which is also portrayed in this beautiful Maternus mural that used to be. I don't know if I don't think it's there anymore, right? These are the older exhibits. But be that as it may, and of course, this giant pig-like Antelodont is represented by this tooth here, very biostratigraphically, very diagnostic. There's a horse, a dwarf horse, which is diagnostic, and some other things I'll talk about in a second. So this is cool stuff. And as I said, the stuff that is being found in Belgrade compares favorably with the stuff that you find out in northwestern Nebraska. And there are a handful of important fossil localities of this particular vintage that are found in North America, and Belgrade fills in a gap between some of the localities in Delaware, I think it is, as well as, of course, the many localities in Florida, and this time zone 20 million years ago in the early Miocene, late Arretotherium land mammal age, is also similar to what we were finding in the Panama Canal, based on a project that I had funded from the National Science Foundation when they were excavating the canal for 6 or 7 years. And I had crews of interns who were living in Panama, and every day they'd go out and collect fossils. And here's the first cohort of those those interns, literally collecting from early Miocene fossil deposits along the Panama Canal, the southern reaches of the canal. And in one of the blocks they found from here, they got a bear dog that you can see here, and then the jaw of, the scapula of a rhinoceros like Arretotherium or Minotus, I forget which one, but an early Miocene rhino. So these are similar to the kinds of animals that were being found in this time zone of early Miocene, Araucarian land mammal age. And this is an artist's reconstruction, very different from the reconstruction that you saw from Nebraska, which looks like an arid, almost grassland, although grasses were not prevalent at that time. But this is the kinds of animals that we find from Panama indicate the ancient neotropical rainforests. And this is a reconstruction of the animals that lived in that ancient rainforest based on, this was actually done in Photoshop or Illustrator. This is a digital artist rendering by an undergraduate from University of Florida. And so one question I have is, what was Belgrade? Was Belgrade more similar in its ecology during this time, or its land mammals, to something like we saw from Panama, or something like that we would see, which is in a more arid habitat, like you see from the Araucarian of the early Miocene of Nebraska? So the significance, by now I've already hit home the point that the reason that the fossil land mammals are important is that they're diagnostic in terms of indexes, an index to geologic time, but they're also super rare, 1 in 1,000. About 5 years ago, a collector, Bradley Dixon, I don't know, I've never met him, but he and is it his cousin or a friend's son? He was collecting in Belgrade, and they found fragments of a tooth and sent a photograph to me and said, what does this look like? And I said, well, I can't really tell because you'll need to send me all the bits and pieces. And we are prepared to put them back together. And this is another taxon of a anthracothere. It's a primitive cloven or even-toed hoofed mammal, sort of related to peccaries, but not really. I mean, it's in that more primitive artiodactyl variety. But this is a diagnostic tooth of an anthracothere, which is a new record for Belgrade. And also, what I should say is that when you put together Arretotherium, Daeodon, the giant Entelodont, those are highly diagnostic to Araucarian land mammal age. And if you add on, in addition to the Daeodon and the Arretotherium, if you find the horse Archaeohippus, it also indicates a vintage of somewhere between 20 and perhaps even as young as 18 million years. So these three kinds of fossils indicate the age of that Belgrade formation with regard to North American land mammal comparisons. So when I first started going there, I was just hoping to find stuff in surface prospecting. We weren't allowed to go to the cliffs because of OSHA regulations. And they said you can collect, they used to let people collect in the mines. And I'm sorry to hear that it's been closed down for 1.5 years. And that's too bad. I hope things turn around. I certainly will go back when they turn around, Bruce. See, you're shaking your head. But basically, when you collect there, you basically work on the spoil piles, and it's hard to know whether you're in the Oligocene. Which part of this time column are you in? You don't know because it's not in situ. But you know, if you find the land mammals, then you know that they're early Miocene because that's the only time they existed, and likely those were dumped there by the front end loaders from the cliffs. But what we really wanted to do is we asked the foreman of the mine, Lee Fetzko, if we could collect in situ in this locality, because I wanted to know what else was collected of the same age from the lower Miocene Belgrade Formation. He says, I can't let you up there. But what I'll do is I'll take front end loaders and I'll basically scoop out this part of the stratigraphy for you, and I'll place them along the road, the access road, whoops, in piles. And sure enough, look at this. So what we had in 2017 was pristine sediments that the miner had his front end loaders dump from the cliffs into these 5 piles for us to look at. And what we knew there is that was the context. It wasn't willy-nilly. We knew that those were from essentially most of it was from the Belgrade Formation. So whatever we found there was the same age as the land mammals. And this would not have happened without Lee Cohn. Lee Cohn went and talked to the miner, Lee Fesco, and asked me to write a letter of support from the on our letterhead, and he showed it to Lee Fesco. And basically through his advocacy, Lee's advocacy, the branch foreman then said, okay, we're not going to let you we're not going to let you go there for safety reasons, but I'm going to aggregate some piles for you guys to work on. So that to me is a fabulous partnership between Lee, okay, but also industry, working together because we wanted to understand better the paleontology of the Belgrade Formation, and I wanted us to find more land mammals. So here we are. We on one of those Fridays before the Aurora Fossil Festival on Memorial Day weekend, I think it was 2017, if I remember correctly. Lee and his fossil club, and me and my students from the University of Florida, including Victor, and then Dave Bohaska, and I think Fred Grady may have been there at the time. We all of us converged on the Friday, and we collected the heck out of these piles. And we did it through dry screening, and then bringing matrix back to sort. Okay, and this is what it was like that Friday working on those piles. And Victor, what are you looking at here with Sean back in the laboratory?
That picture is actually us working on material from Panama, but we can pretend it was from Belgrade.
No, I don't pretend it's from Belgrade. You're among friends here. Okay, that's just, I'm showing a picture that actually Victor did work when he was a graduate student at the University of Florida. Okay, yeah, you're welcome. No, but actually the Belgrade sharks are really interesting, and Victor was mentoring an undergraduate student from a local community college to sort out the sharks from these piles, because all the other sharks that people were finding, you don't know if they were Miocene or Pliocene or Oligocene, but the sharks from these piles, because of the stratigraphic context, we know that was part of the marine fauna at that time. Okay. So that's the Belgrade project, and things have, to be totally honest, things have stalled since COVID. There's another reason that the Fossil Club that Lee was in charge of, there were some issues with coordination with the local museum, and I don't want to get into all that drama, but basically, I wanted to continue this project because it was such a successful partnership among professional paleontologists from the Smithsonian, Dave Bohaska, okay, University of Florida professor, me, curator, and graduate students and staff, okay, and then Lee Cohn and the Friends of the Aurora Fossil Museum, okay, and then the miner, Lee Fesco. So it was basically made to order. It was a fabulous way for us to work together. But since COVID, everything is shut down, and the project itself sort of stalled until things opened back up. However, if any of you in your collection, somebody said that they may have a land mammal from Belgrade. If you do, I'd love you to upload a picture of it to the fossil museum, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and tell me you've done it, and I'll take a look at it for you. You don't even have to send it to me if you don't want to. All right, so I finished with Belgrade. But I want to talk about a project that is a citizen science partnership that unites fossil clubs throughout the United States. And this is a project that was funded in 2013 by the National Science Foundation. And in the big picture is there were about 50 fossil clubs like yourselves throughout the United States. Some are small, some are large. Some clubs like the Tampa Bay Fossil Club have hundreds of members. Some Some like the West Virginia Fossil Club is small, it doesn't have a website. So there are all kinds of varieties of fossil clubs. And my goal was, like bird watchers and other kinds of star and astronomy clubs, my goal of this project was to federate, to allow, by federate, what I mean is to allow the fossil clubs to know that the other fossil clubs exist and to share ideas and resources and interest in a common love of paleontology. So it was basically a national network. We created a national network of fossil clubs and their members of clubs in the United States. What we found quickly is that there were many people interested in this project who said, I'm not affiliated with a fossil club. Do I have to join a fossil club to be a member of this project? And the answer was no. So we have lots of individual members who don't really care about being members of a fossil club, although many do, but they just want to sort of share in the concept of social paleontology, an online social network. So this project went from 2013 till October of 2019 when funding ran out. The website is still active. We have an app that's developed, and we also have active social media related to the fossil project. We now have more than 20,000 participants in this network, 9,000 of which are registered on our website, but the majority of which connected, at least when we were active up to 2019, they were connecting through social media. And I have to confess to you that I don't use social media. So I wasn't part of that initiative, but I was more interested in what happens to this project online. The goals of our project were to develop the concept of social paleontology, because science educators and psychologists, social psychologists understand that the reason that we like to collect fossils is multiple. And one is you like to work individually to collect the fossils, but you like to share them and socialize with friends and colleagues who have similar interests. So the concept of social paleontology was very important. And one of the outcomes of this project was where graduate students getting their PhD in science education better understood the concept of developing social networks using the fossil project as an example, in order for people to learn about fossils and share knowledge. And the theory behind this in learning is called developing what's called a community of practice of like-minded people who share a common interest, whether it's in basket weaving or astronomy or collecting fossils. So we developed a community of practice that together has more than 20,000 participants now. And in addition to sharing knowledge, you also can contribute scientific knowledge by uploading your images from your personal collections into this what I call an e-museum. So for those of you who have an app, you can download the MyFossil mobile app. Victor, do you use this app?
I use the website more than the app.
Yeah. So I don't use the app, but I know that actually most of our members join because that they found out about the fossil project through the app. So it's a good entree. But if you have a smartphone, whether it's Google, whether it's an iPhone or other types of phones, you can download the app and use it to take pictures of fossils that you collect in the field and pictures of other people who are working along with you. And then you can ultimately go back and upload these fossils to the website. So one thing that we all want to do in paleontology is we want to make contributions to advance the science of paleontology through the production of knowledge. And when you collect fossils, every one of those fossils can tell a story, and some of them are going to be really important, some are going to be very common. And when you get the really important stuff, it's important for you to share about your fossils. And one way you can do this is you can donate them, of course, and museums love to have fossil collectors, citizen scientists donate important fossils, but sometimes people don't want to donate their fossils. And what you can do is you can donate images of the fossils and keep those fossils in your collections at your home until it's time for you to decide whether you want to donate the physical specimens. So what you produce by uploading images and locality data to the fossil project is you're basically submitting what's called a digital voucher. And for a while, my colleagues were poo-pooing that these digital vouchers aren't worth a darn because they're not really the real specimen. And you'll never publish about these in the peer-reviewed literature because you have to have the tangible object, the fossil, in order to publish on them. Well, Victor proved them wrong because he actually published a paper in the Journal of Vertebrate Paleontology. What year was this, Victor? I don't see it here. 2019?
Yeah, 2019.
2019. Why don't you explain a little bit about how you use the Fossil Project to provide some of the resources that were the specimens that are described in this peer-reviewed journal, which one of the editors told me that they'd never publish anything from the Fossil Museum because that's not a real voucher.
So this project was my research project when I was an intern at the Calvert Marine Museum, looking at the evolution of Megalodon. And primarily what we were looking at is the timing and rate at which the lateral cusplets are lost between the ancestor Chubatensis and Megalodon. We looked at specimens in the Calvert Marine Museum collection and specimens in the Smithsonian collection. But when I started working at University of Florida, some individuals that lived along Calvert Cliff started to post images, and someone had posted pictures of specimens that came from near willows that they had marked in the notes that it came from bed 10. And that was the degree of information I needed to be able to include the specimen in our data set. I needed an image to verify if it had the cusplets, and I needed that precise stratigraphic information. And all of that information was provided by the person who uploaded to the website. From that, John at the time had additional specimens from the St. Mary's Formation. So he actually uploaded specimens to my fossil as well that allowed me to expand the data set from the St. Mary's Formation. So I believe the total number of specimens in the study was around 359, and maybe 22 of those were uploaded to my fossil.
So Victor really is on the vanguard of this digital paleontology wave, and he basically broke the barrier down of us being able to publish digital vouchers in the peer-reviewed literature, and even more so, they're digital vouchers in a digital museum called the MyFossil E-Museum. This is one of the main components of the MyFossil website, where people can upload images of their fossils, and if they provide stratigraphic data, the kind of data that are needed to understand occurrences, then those fossils are curated by volunteers and deemed to be what are called research grade. We have 9,000 specimens that have been uploaded over the past couple of years in the MyFossil E-Museum, and about 1,000 of them are research grade. So we'll take anything if you want to upload it just for fun, to share it with other people, to get it out there in the public domain, that's fine. But if you wanted your fossils to actually have scientific value, then if you add the locality data, the collecting data, and the what's needed to document the location, what's called geolocation, then those specimens are occurrences that that paleontologists can use in the peer-reviewed literature. What you have to have there is what Victor just said. You have to have an image that can be verified as to the identity of that object, and therefore it's vouchered. It's a digital voucher. So we now have more than 1,000 of these digital vouchers, and the way you upload them is you have to join the MyFossil website. It's free. You join it, and then once you join it, you log in. You go into the E-Museum, which, by the way, the MyFossil E-Museum is now an official repository from a digital biodiversity database called GBIF and iDigBio. And the GBIF database is housed in Copenhagen, and it has almost 2 billion natural history museum specimens that are vouchered in this database, GBIF. And our little E-Museum and our 1,000 specimens are on that big database, and people can use those for research on a global scale. So the way you upload specimens is really simple. You just press this Add New Specimen, and a window comes up, and you upload the image of your specimen with a scale. and then it asks you for the locality data. And then you just submit it, and it becomes, and then it's curated and becomes part of the holdings, the digital holdings of the MyFossil eMuseum. Just to give you an example of some of the digital, I went and saw some of the Calvert fossils that are on the MyFossil eMuseum, and you can see that there are 144 specimens in our museum collections that are on catalog elsewhere. One provision is if the specimen that you have is already cataloged in an official repository like the Smithsonian or the CMM or UF, then it shouldn't go up here because that's duplication. But if you have private collections that are not yet cataloged in an official repository, this is sort of a way station for your data before you choose to, when you want to, if and when you want to, donate the physical specimens to the museum. At that point, then this specimen can be linked. These photographs can be linked by something called a GUID, where the specimen will, it's like a DOI for those of you who know, it's basically, there's an attached number to each one of these images, and you can link those once this image is put in a museum. You could have in a remarks column, this also represents the mFeM specimen number 85631, and then it can give you the digital object identifier, and so that they can be cross-listed. But basically, once the specimen is cataloged in a physical museum, then the need for this image here on this is then there's no longer a need for it. It's a great way for citizen scientists to get involved in the curation process and to be able to show off their collections to 20,000 other people who might be interested in looking at what you have, and to professionals. If someone were to upload images of land mammals from the Calvert or from Belgrade, I'd like to know about that, and I'd like to be able to look at them, and I'd like other people to be able to look at them as well. All right, we're wrapping up here. Yeah. Okay, so just sort of going back to sort of an overview of my talk. The reason I'm interested in the Belgrade quarry is it really captures a rare moment in the early Miocene of Eastern North America that's not really well represented. Okay, it's certainly not as well represented as slightly younger specimens from the Calvert Cliff, and there's some localities. There's a locality in Delaware, but between Delaware and Florida, there's not a whole lot. And the cool thing is that the kinds of mammals that are found in Belgrade from the Belgrade Formation are of similar age to the kinds of mammals that are in the classic localities out west, like in the rickery of northwestern Nebraska from the Agate Springs Fossil Bed National Monument, and also going as far south into Panama. So there's this interesting connection southward and westward with Belgrade, and there are all told probably around about 24 land mammal specimens, either in private collections or that I know of, let's say, or in museum collections. And I would dearly love to find more and actually write this paper up along with the citizen scientists who participated, and Victor and some of the other students, and Dave Bohaska and Lee Cohn that have worked on this project, and not just talk about the fossils themselves, but the use of a digital repository and push that envelope in terms of the future of digital paleontology. So that's the science behind why I'm interested in this. But I guess you also can understand that I'm really interested in, as I know that you are, the concept of all of us working as a community to better understand science. And the concept of citizen science has been taken over now by the concept of community participation in science, where the scientists and the community participants, everybody, can make tangible contributions that have outcomes for advancing the science of paleontology. It's not just that the collectors give the fossils to the professionals, and the professionals make the contributions. That it can be more of a continuum from the time a specimen is collected to the time that an amateur may want to upload their fossils to our digital repository on MyFossil eMuseum, to the time that image is is known by other by paleontologists, and then a project can be developed and peer-reviewed research can be done, and we're all better off for that we are all better off for that in terms of the process of the science of advancing knowledge about paleontology. So with that, I'll conclude, and I'm happy to answer questions or take comments.
Bruce, did you describe the depositional environment for the Belgrade Formation?
I have not, but just a second here. I want to make sure I don't, okay. There are descriptions in Blackwell, in Ward and Blackwell. I didn't make the descriptions, but there are fairly good stratigraphic or sedimentological descriptions of the different units in the Belgrade sequence. Yes.
I'm assuming it's a shallow marine.
Oh yeah.
Environment.
Yeah. It has huge oysters, so of course oysters is shallow marine, and yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Victor.
I'd like to just make a quick comment. So one of the things on my fossil you talk about is including locality information.
Yeah.
But I want everyone to realize that if you do upload something to my fossil, there's a little box there that you can check that says do not disclose location. And what that does is it keeps the location private to yourself and the admins on the site. So if you're collecting fossils from one of your secret locations, you're not obligated to give out that information to everybody to contribute. You can still share your fossils and keep that information private to yourself.
Yeah, and that would have to be something you negotiate with a curator who might want to use a paleontologist who might want to use that information. Correct. And we understand the sensitivity there, and we wanted to make the platform more versatile, so everybody should feel comfortable uploading their fossils without worrying about, oh, somebody's going to go and collect at my secret locality. Thanks, Victor. That's a good point.
When do you anticipate writing a rough draft of that paper on the description of the diversity of the land mammals from Belgrade?
Yeah, I would love to do it. I think it's too soon because we don't have enough diversity. We only have about 24 or 30 specimens from the land mammals. Victor and Fav, the student, have really moved along the description of the sharks. And of course, that's valuable because it'll tell us what were early Miocene sharks like in that area, but we just don't have enough diversity yet. I wish we could get 100 specimens and that's I don't feel comfortable yet writing up the fossils because there's not enough. There's an interesting story, but it's not fully fleshed out to the point which I would feel comfortable publishing it yet.
Okay, thank you.
It might take a couple, if things open back up and we could have a surge of collecting again, and if we double the sample and have 50 specimens with new taxa, then that would be a game changer potentially.
Bruce, there are two other quarries owned by Martin Marietta.
Yeah.
Within the area. The first one is Richlands, and there have been land mammal fossils that have been found there, specifically ground sloths and horses. I don't know, I suspect that the horse is Pleistocene, but I don't know about the ground sloth. And there's a quarry west of New Bern called Clark's that reopened to collecting about 3 or 4 years ago. And one individual, Don Rideout with the North Carolina Club, found a good sized horse. It was either a femur or some other appendage part, but it was in excellent condition. And again, I kind of suspect it was Pleistocene. But my question is, have you gotten any input from those two quarries?
I have not. Isn't there also Onslow, or is that a different quarry?
Which one?
Onslow?
Onslow and Richland are the same things.
Okay.
Onslow is also the beach at the Marine Station, Camp Lejeune, but Richlands is what the locals call the quarry west of Jacksonville. Yeah. Onslow, Richlands, it's the same thing.
Okay, yeah, no, Bruce, I'm not aware of what's been found from those other quarries and whether anything is whether there are any pre-Pleistocene land mammal ages. Excuse me, land mammals represented.
Okay.
A thought, Bruce.
Yeah.
So if you were able to go back to Belgrade at this point, it would probably be roughly 2 to 3 years since the last time you were there. Are you concerned about the state of those mounds that they set aside for you? Because there's really nothing that separates them from the spoil piles.
Yeah.
And with that, do you think you might ask if they could redeposit new material from the specific layer?
Yeah, so it sort of depends upon, that's a really complex question. That's a complex question. And it also I'd want to know if Doug Fetzko is still there and how he would feel about being asked to do this again. But yeah, I mean, I'd want to go back and look at the mounds, and if the mounds still have some integrity, I'd want to work those mounds. But who knows? I mean, also that place was flooded. I don't know, Bruce, to what depth, but I heard that with the rains from 2.5, 3 years ago, it was the quarry was flooded to 30 feet depth or something.
It was flooded back in 2010 or 11. They got 33 inches of rain in 3 days, and the White River came over the rim and just turned the place into a lake. They had to shut down mining for about 3 months, and I talked to the plant manager, the site manager, and I don't know if I should say this, but it cost Martin Marietta $800,000 in lost revenue and expenses to clean the mess up.
Yeah,
they were shut for 1.5 years, 2 years, but that was pretty long time ago, 2010, 2011. They may have had a flood since then, but the 2010 one was terrible.
well, they had those huge rains, right after those piles. I mean, so I think the piles were deposited in 16 or 17, and soon thereafter, there were those storms that went through, and
oh, you mean the hurricane?
Yeah.
Florence. Okay, I'm not aware of what happened down there with Florence, but I really couldn't have been as bad because 33 inches of rain in 3 days. And I got that from the guy who runs the scales there, Milton Meadows. 33 inches is quite an avalanche of rainfall, if I can use that phrase.
Sure.
By the way, if you need someone to interface for you, like I said, I'm only 20 miles away, and I go by there a couple of times a month on the way to Jacksonville, and I know the guy who runs the scales. I can pop in there, and if you want me to hand carry any letter, or if you want me to, show the flag, so to speak, I'll be glad to do it.
Thank you very much. If you get wind of the fact that they might be opening back up for collecting, I certainly would want to know that.
All righty.
And then we will go from there. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, Bruce, thank you very much. Great presentation. Always enjoy hearing from you. And we wish you all the success with that project and anything else you're working on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your interest and your attention. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Bruce.
Bye. Bye, Ralph. Bye, Victor. Mike, good to see you. See you, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.